I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. As you can see, the bar is back in my home office here. I've had to move the bar back in. It is tax season, as you guys know. Every year, I got to keep a bottle of tequila. I'm running low on tequila. I'm going to have to go to the liquor store later this week and stock up. It's tax season. I'm doing my income taxes, and I need something to calm my nerves because, like a lot of people in my business and other successful business people in a high income bracket, I'm not complaining, but well, maybe I am. I'm under the belief that we're taxed to death here, as I know a lot of people would agree with. And I have to have a bottle of tequila when I look at what I'm going to owe Revenue Canada on top of the quarterly installments I pay them. And it still amazes me, and I've blogged about it many times before, how some people applaud the new taxes that the NDP government is rolling out. I don't understand it. I guess it depends on which side of the equation you're on, just like in the United States, where they're talking about raising the tax rate on people earning over $10 million up to 70%. And I guess if you're earning that kind of money, you think it's an absolute terrible idea. If you're earning less than that, you think it's the greatest idea since sliced bread. So it all depends on the economic, where you are on the economic scale. But anyways, let's talk about some taxes here today. I want to brush on a bunch of different topics here, a little bit of a potpourri of things here. So we all, first thing I want to talk about is the appealing your assessed values. And every year, we get our property assessments, and of course they've been going up. In some cases, they've been going down a bit. It depends on what you own. If it's been a detached home, generally, your property assessed values have gone down a little bit. For pretty much all my condos, my assessed values went up. But I had a couple of clients here that appealed their property assessments. And these are interesting situations. These two clients are in the Grandview area. And they have rezoned a lot of that area for multifamily, much higher density. And both these guys are on busier streets. One of them's on Nanaimo, the other one's on Broadway. And they essentially, though, have now zoned a lot of this as C2, which is going to now allow for land assemblies. And you can build a 3-story or 4-story condo with retail on the ground. So it has greatly increased the potential of their homes. But the crazy thing here is they have had huge property assessed values have gone up. We're talking several million dollars. Now, these homes, if they're in a land assembly, if they do decide to sell them, which they're not right now, could, in the right land assembly, garner, let's say, $3.5 million. And they are currently assessing them, for tax assessed reasons, very close to that. Yet they are not selling these homes. They are not in a land assembly. So this is a bit of a crazy situation that's going on now. In other words, the city is assessing these homes on potential as opposed to realized selling prices, this is new. And I'm going to keep an eye on this, but I want people to realize kind of what's going on here. I can totally understand that if this was involved in a land assembly and these homes were sold or they were on the market, maybe they could be assessed at that value. But these people aren't selling these homes. And again, these tax assessed values, which are roughly about 3 times what a house down the street would be worth if it wasn't in a land assembly, are being assessed at now. It's based on potential, which I think is a slippery slope, but we'll follow it later on. The other thing I'm hearing, and maybe some people can comment on my YouTube blog here, but I'm hearing now from some people that if you buy a pre-sale condo and you buy it, let's say 2 years ago, you bought it, and it's getting ready to complete this year. If you have no intention or never had any intention of living in that condo, and it was as an investment, and I don't know how you have to stipulate that or approve all that, but if you put that market, wait till it completes, get the keys and list that condo, I'm hearing rumors now, and maybe someone can substantiate this for me, that CRA may just look at that, and instead of taxing it on capital gain, which it should be and which it's always been, you buy the condo for 100, sell it for 200, you're only taxed 50% of that $100,000 gain. Now I'm hearing, and I've got to look into this further, that Revenue Canada may be taxing this at your full marginal tax rate, so not at the capital gains tax rate of 50%. That's something that I'm going to need to keep an eye on. I've got some calls into some tax accountants, some lawyers. I'm still trying to straighten this out. It's kind of wishy-washy, but it appears to me that this may be the case. If you do sell a pre-sale condo, make a profit on it, of course, you would think that you're taxed on it at 50% of the gain, but that may not be the case. Consult a lawyer and a tax accountant on this going forward. Okay, a few other things I wanted to talk about here. On the news, CKNW's had a lot of stuff in my car I was listening to about the BC speculation tax, the Vancouver empty homes tax. A couple of things I want to make people aware of. If you are selling your home or you're planning on selling your home in the near future, make sure that when you file the Vancouver empty homes tax, and especially this new BC speculation tax, that you do not phone it in. You need to do it online so that you will get a declaration sent back to you. And this declaration is vital. If you're going to sell your home now, part of my listing documents I'm going to need are the last 2 years of, if you're in Vancouver, would be the last 2 declarations for the Vancouver empty homes tax. Plus now I need this new BC spec tax declaration. And this declaration is a 1-page form that lists the property and the status of the property, whether it's a principal residence or if it's tenanted. And what I'm finding is some of my clients who phone it in, you do not get the proper declaration back. We can't use it if we're listing a home. So it only comes into effect, as I say, if you're planning on selling your home in the next few years, because they'll go back up to 2 years, and we're going to need these declarations back 2 years. Because something to keep in mind, these speculation tax and vacancy taxes, they run with the property, not with the owner. So you need to be very careful, when you're buying a property, that your realtor has a clause in there that requires you to get both those declarations before you remove subjects. And if you're a seller, you're also going to need to have these, because any good realtor is going to be looking for these declarations. Because again, it can come back to you 2 years later. It does not run with the previous owner. Once he's sold, he's out. You buy a condo or a house and didn't get those declarations, 2 years from now, you could get a notice in the mail saying you owe us $15,000 for the spec tax, either the Vancouver one or the provincial one. And you have no recourse unless you have those declarations. It runs with the property. So this is vitally important if you're listing or buying a home, that your realtor is using ironclad clauses in there to get those declarations. And again, do not phone them in on the BC spec tax. These guys are swamped. They don't know what they're doing. It's a new tax. It's a fiasco. The verification they're giving to you when you phone it in will not work. It won't suffice if we want to list your home, because it's just a simple email notification saying you filed it. It doesn't give the name of the property. It doesn't give the status, the address, anything. So you need to file that online to get the proper declaration if you're going to list and sell your home. The other thing I'll just comment quickly on, there's been a bunch of people that have been on the news lately asking what is the purpose of this BC spec tax and the Vancouver empty homes tax. And I blogged about this in the past. Where are these thousands and thousands of empty one-bedroom units that the city said was in downtown Vancouver? That has just not materialized because they never were. Anything that was empty was being used part-time, 6 months or over, as it turns out, because the latest numbers I'm seeing is it's less than 200 homes have been put on the market as a result of the Vancouver empty homes tax. It's too late to tell right yet on the BC spec tax. That's not going to do anything either. But we've had the Vancouver empty homes tax in now for well over a year. They've put something like 200 homes back on the market, and I can tell you those homes are mostly detached homes. Detached homes that are asking $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month rent. So these aren't affordable homes to rent. These aren't the 1 bedrooms and the studios and the 2 bedrooms. Even though those would be a 2-bedroom home downtown, a condo would run about $4,000 a month. Hardly affordable. So it's not moving the needle on creating any new housing supply like we were promised. It's really just an envy tax, folks. That's all this is. It's an envy tax. It's a wealth tax on people that might own a second home, might use it part-time, whatever the case may be. And, that's all this is, just like the school taxes. This school tax, if you've got a $5 million home, and I know people are going to say, oh, woe is me, you've got a $5 million home that you're using part-time. Well, if you've got a $5 million home, that's what, $150,000 in added tax, $150,000 a year on top of your regular property tax. Now, according to this guy that came in on CKNW, tells me that what's happening is a few people are deciding now to sell these homes. And what are they doing? Instead of living in the home part-time during the summer months, they're now renting. So he says it's the reverse. He says it's actually putting more strain on the rental market. And these homes weren't affordable anyways. You're going to rent these homes for $10,000 or $15,000 if you put it into a rental pool. Those aren't going to move the needle on affordability or putting more homes in the market for renters. Those need to be one bedrooms. And it's just not doing it. So it's basically, as I say, just an envy tax here. The other thing, which I pointed out before too, how much money has the city of Vancouver actually taken in on this Vancouver empty homes tax? Now, from what I hear, it's about $25 million. And a lot of people were raving and jumping up and down, $25 million. Wow. To me, that is underwhelming because they had first promised several $100 million in revenue because they were saying that there was thousands of empty homes that were going to be paying this tax, or they were going to be put on the MLS and sold. We haven't seen any huge jump up in condos at all because of this empty homes tax, and we also haven't seen a huge spurt in available rental units. $25 million is what they brought in, but you have to back out the cost to run this program, and for what I'm hearing, it's about $10 million. So now we're talking net maybe $15 million. Now, $15 million, folks, is not going to move the needle at all. What is that going to do towards affordable housing? You're not going to be able to build very much with $15 million. So I think time will tell here as well on the BC spec tax, but already I'm seeing the vultures swarming here. Where are the hard numbers here? They're just not there. And if someone can point me to some numbers that's showing that this is having an effect on both in creating more rental income properties for rent, and we're not talking $7,000 detached homes. Show me where the vacancy rate for downtown Vancouver is near zero. It's 1%. It hasn't boosted inventory on the MLS, at least very little, and it hasn't really generated any income for the city. Maybe $10 or $15 million so far. And I think we're going to find the same thing with the BC spec tax. Very little money and the optics are terrible. So we'll see where that goes. And the other final thing I'll throw out here during tax season here is the foreign buyers tax. Have we heard too much about that lately? Now, the NDP government just raised it from 15 to 20% last year. But do you ever hear anything about the foreign buyers tax? I still have people commenting on my YouTube blog saying, that all these foreign buyers are the cause, and that's why the detached market has collapsed, because foreign buyers aren't buying. As I've said many times here, we never had foreign buyers. Did we have Chinese buyers? Absolutely. I haven't sold a detached house in a lot of cases to anything but a Chinese buyer for the last 4 or 5 years. But these people aren't foreign buyers. They have their Canadian passport or their PR status. So I don't know of anyone that's triggering a 20% foreign buyers tax. Nobody is triggering that. Why would they? The people that are buying these homes are in the process of getting their Canadian citizenship. So in the 5 or 6 years ago, you might have had a few people that did that while they were in the process of getting it. Now all they do is just wait until they get their PR status, and then they'll buy the house. So for that reason, you haven't heard the NDP talk about what kind of revenue they've been bringing in at all. Because I'll tell you, it's a pittance. Nobody is triggering that 20% foreign buyers tax, and they never really did. The final thing I'll say on it, in our contracts of purchase and sale, everyone should know this, 3 years ago, there's a declaration now that everyone has to use whether you're buying or selling property. You have to designate whether you are a Canadian citizen for tax purposes. I have never had anyone, buyer or seller, check off that box that they are not a Canadian citizen for tax purposes. So there has never been a foreign buyer's tax triggered. And that's why you don't hear them talking about what kind of revenue. And again, they promised hundreds of millions of dollars was going to go into affordable housing off this foreign buyer's tax, but it just has not produced that. In my opinion, these taxes are just a tax grab. It's an envy tax. There's nothing more to it than that. It's all optics, smoke and mirrors to try and tell people that we're trying to do something. We're going to try and make homes more affordable, and they're not. This isn't going to do it. Taxing people to death is going to make the problem worse. And if you don't believe me, you're going to find out when we get the coiled spring effect, when this market turns, and eventually we're going to get rid of these taxes anyways. They're not working. And if you think they are, if it makes you feel better, sleep better at night, makes you warm and fuzzy, go ahead. But the results just are not there. The revenues aren't there. Putting a bunch of homes, making more affordable rentals is not there. None of this is living up to the promise. The final thing I'll just throw out here. It's also been in the news here a lot about, these rental advocacy groups and these rental tenancy rights groups. They're petitioning the provincial government, the city of Vancouver, to build more purposely built rental housing because it's in a crisis mode. And I agree. It's no fun being a renter, as I've said for many, many years. There's nothing wrong with being a short-term renter. As a matter of fact, I encourage it for some people. If you're new to the city, you're not sure your job prospects for a few years, then rent for a little while. See how your job plays out before you commit. Check out a few different neighborhoods and where you want to live. But renting long-term in a city like Vancouver or any major city is a loser's game. It is. The numbers just don't make sense. And I've gone through a myriad of videos in the past on renting versus owning. So it is in a crisis mode. Vacancy is near zero. Rental rates keep going up every year. You want to be an owner as opposed to a long-term renter for all the reasons I've listed in many different blogs here. But the funny thing is, some of the commenters I get in my YouTube blog here, as you guys have seen, a lot of these guys tell me that renting is great. It's the only way to go. Why would you want to be a renter? Why pay these crazy condo prices? I'm a renter and I'm happy and I would never own. So I don't understand it. You can't have it both ways. Which is it? We know which way it is. Renting for any more than a few years in a city like Vancouver and paying $30,000 a year for a one-bedroom is going to crush you financially. You will never earn enough money to save for retirement or anything else. You're getting further and further behind the 8 ball there. But if you saw some of the comments from some of these guys, they just rave about renting and how great it is. So maybe you guys can straighten me out on it. Which is it? Is renting a dreamland or is renting not so great? Because there's two conflicting camps here that I keep seeing. A lot of these ones on my YouTube channel, as I say, they think renting and save the difference is the way to go. But we all know there is no difference to save. It's not tax efficient whatsoever. And not to mention just the intangibles of owning, which I've often talked about. Forget about it being serving double duty, meaning that it's giving you a roof over your head, which should be priority number one. You need shelter. The second thing is, though, if you keep it for 25 or 30 years, it will be far and away the best investment you've ever made. You're paying down the debt, the property is appreciating, and when you sell it, it goes to you completely tax-free. It's the only true tax shelter we get. But the intangibles are, you've got stability in your life. You're not waiting for that phone call from your landlord to tell you that I'm selling the unit and you got to be out in 2 months. Or my daughter's going to move into the unit and you got to be out in 2 months. Or I'm giving you a $300 rent increase. Or it's a rent eviction. Just the stability that you have alone is reason enough to be an owner as opposed to a renter. But it never ceases to amaze me. Some people think it's great, and if you think renting long-term is the way to go, then by all means stick with it. If it makes you feel good, you can go on to some of these blog sites that'll tell you that renting and saving the difference is the way to go. Buy that guy's book that I mentioned about a year ago, who wrote a book about renting, and then it turned out he was a fraud. He didn't even rent, he owned. He was an opportunist trying to sell books. I'm Owen Bigland. Final thing I'll say, if you're not following me on Twitter, please do. I'm I won't engage people on Twitter because I don't have the time, but I am posting a lot of interesting articles on the market, statistics, motivational stuff. I think you'll find it enjoyable. So if you're not following me on Twitter, I think I got about 3,000 followers on there now. Please do. See you next week.